Hey everyone, welcome to Trenches the podcast. Today we are meeting with Grace Howland, the founder of Evoquer, an experience-based fragrance brand that launched and sold out just 2 months ago. At the helm, Grace went from working in investment banking and private equity to quitting her 9 to 5 to pursue building her dream brand. Today we're diving into raising capital, handing out products at Coachella, to how Grace documented over 500 days of creating her brand on TikTok. Let's dig into the trenches. Hey, crew, and welcome back to Trenches. I'm your host, Milan Terez. On this show, we have unfiltered conversations with entrepreneurs in the messy middle. We dig into the experiments, defining decisions, disasters, pivots, and breakthroughs that shaped their companies long before the world was watching. Before we get into it, if you like this episode, which I know you will, please take a moment and like, subscribe, and share this episode to your group chat. Hi, Grace. How are you today?
Good. I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
I am so excited to get into everything with you. I've been loving your journey on TikTok. I'm going to have so many questions about it. But
Thank you.
first and foremost, what trench are you in right now?
So we are in growth mode. As you mentioned, we launched 2 months ago. So I feel like there was kind of this mental switch that I had to flip from building a business, getting it ready for launch, and then actually now having to grow the business. So we're really in the marketing trench, I would say, right now, trying a bunch of things with a very scrappy marketing budget and seeing what sticks and what works.
Isn't that the best and hardest stage
Very
for
much.
everybody? It's either
Yes.
getting those initial sales or it is going from 1 to 100 for sure.
Yes, definitely.
So let's dive in. Share with us the journey, your journey before starting Evoke.
Yeah, it's a long one. I have always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My dad actually sent me a photo about a year ago of a business plan I wrote when I was 11 for a business called Golf Balls by Grace. The business plan was to sell them for more than I bought them for. So I understood profitability all the way back then. So I started my career really in with a startup. So I was working part-time for a startup in college and then was a finance major at SMU, Southern Methodist University down in Dallas, Texas. And I went
Pony
the
up.
finance route. Yeah, pony up, baby. I went the finance route and went into investment banking for 2 years. And then followed by 4 years in private equity. And I knew that that wasn't really what I wanted to do long term. I enjoyed speaking with the founders that I got to talk through that job. I loved learning how to build a good business and grow a business. But ultimately, I wanted to be the one doing that. And so when my firm announced that they were moving from LA to New York, I quit the very next day and took 9 months off to travel, which ended up with the business idea of okay. So long journey, happy to dive into the startup, anything private equity or travel related in that time frame.
Oh, yeah. We're going to cover it all because it's all a part of your brand journey for sure.
Definitely.
So, in the private equity and investment banking space, what are your top things most people should know about private equity and how did you translate those things into building Evoke?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot about private equity that people don't know. I actually started a series on my personal TikTok page about things I learned in private equity more people should know. So if you're curious about deep dives on any of those topics, you should check it out. And I also answer questions in the comments. So very technical responses there. I would say there's kind of this, I mean, okay, let's take a step back. Private equity, there are tons of different strategies, right? But generally it is buying a company similar how do you would buy a house, flip it kind of, make it better, improve the value, and then hopefully sell it for more than you bought it for. That is just a very broad strategy in private equity. There's kind of this bad reputation that private equity comes in, buys a business, fires everyone to lean out the costs, and then sells it for, more than they bought it for. What I focused on, a lot of the deals that I worked on in private equity were actually called corporate carve-outs. So this is when you take an arm of a business that is no longer needed at this massive corporation, and then you go and you find a management team. So you find a CEO, CFO, a COO out in the market. You build this management team, and then you create this business out of this isolated, forgotten arm of a bigger corporation. So I think there was a lot in that translated well into learning how to build a valuable business, what growth levers you can pull to create value in a business. So that was definitely really helpful in starting my business. That said, that was on a much bigger scale. So the businesses we were looking at were, 100 million plus in sales. I'm not there yet. So it's good from a bigger picture standpoint, but ultimately there weren't very actionable, items at my stage right now. I would say the other thing that really helped though is having a very, very good understanding of financial statements, balance sheet, cash flow, P&L, and being able to make informed decisions for my business based on those financial statements and being able to do that kind of financial analysis. Because I don't think every early stage entrepreneur has that background. And that's definitely been incredibly helpful.
Man, that's so interesting because no one has actually come on the podcast yet and talked through, I don't know if you technically call it the accounting department, but the finance department of
Yeah.
those balance sheets and making sure that things are actually cash flowing from the get go because
Yeah.
there's tons of reasons why people become entrepreneurs or want to build their dream brand. Typically, it's always on the solution. It's just how do I create the actual product or service that's going to be out there in the world? And then a lot of times they get caught up in the pricing structures or what is actually needed to make this thing profitable. Whereas in you're coming in this well informed from day one saying, I know how to make things profitable. I've seen it. Now I just need to translate that into the fragrance space.
Definitely. And when I was, kind of when I first had this idea and started working on it, the first thing I did was build a financial model. And I was like, okay, what does this look like on the number side of things? How much money do I have to invest into marketing, and what does that result in? Like, what does that look like in terms of sales? What can I spend on these different marketing avenues? What ROI do I need to get? Like, what do sampling programs cost me? All of this, like, very technical financial analysis to understand what my options are at this stage. And I know we'll get into it, but I'm completely bootstrapped. And so obviously focusing on my budget and my cash flow is so critical at this stage, but it's definitely been a leg up, I would say for sure, in starting a business.
Oh, for sure. If you guys are founders out there and you need any help, call out, hang out
Yeah,
with Grace, give
definitely.
her a DM because she
Definitely.
definitely knows more about that space than most of us. And a really interesting thing was you did quit your job and travel the world for 9 months and then landed back in LA. What during that time led to the concept of Evoque? Brag about your travels.
Yes, I would more than happy to. So I think so part of it is my love of travel, which I'll get into in a second. But first, I think it was having the mental capacity to even think about starting a business. I feel like I had these 6 years in finance where, I mean, my first week of an investment banking, I pulled an all-nighter on a Saturday. Like I was working 100-hour weeks. It was a tough industry. And, even when you're not at the office, you're kind of mentally on all the time, similar to being an entrepreneur, but you're focused on that job, right? So I feel like I didn't really have this mental capacity to even think in a more creative way about starting a business. I'd have these little business ideas, but there wasn't, this time dedication to starting a business. So I think taking a step back and being able to be more creative and absorb all of this entrepreneurship business content helped a lot in that. It actually started back when I was working in private equity, though. I worked for our Paris office. So we were headquartered in LA, but I spent some time at our Paris office, which was the most incredible opportunity and also is why there's a lot of French influence in my brand. But I bought a perfume like the first couple weeks I was there, and I wore it every single day I was living there. And then when I came back to the States, it kind of sat on my shelf. And then one day I sprayed it and it completely transported me back in time to this time in my life, running around Paris. I'm discovering the city for the first time again. And so that experience stuck with me. That was in 2022. Fast forward to 2024, I was taking this time off. I was traveling, and I remember exactly where I was actually. I was on the beach in Mozambique, which is, in the southern part of Africa. And I had this idea where I was like, I want to memorialize this time in my life in a really cool, unique way. How can I remember this really, really special chapter of my life more than just the photos I'm taking on my iPhone? And I thought back to that experience I had with that fragrance in Paris, and so I was like, I wanna create a brand all about, this scent memory piece is so cool. Everyone's experienced it, right? Everyone has had a scent memory. whether it's cutting grass, their parents used to mow the lawn every Saturday when they were a kid, and that brings them back to their childhood or their grandma's house or whatever it is. There's this breeze that goes by in the summer in the Pacific Northwest where I grew up that reminds me of summer camp. Like everyone's experienced it. And so, I wanted to create a brand that was all about attaching these experiences and life chapters to scent. And so, yeah, my travels really, in Paris and then again after quitting my job helped that idea come to life. And I could talk about that for days, but that's the quick-ish background on those travels.
Oh my gosh. I spent some time in the south of France, one of my many study abroad endeavors. I went on many, and it's so funny because when I lived in France, I think my biggest scent memory to date are all the cafes. The
Yeah.
smell of coffee and the smell
Mhm.
of fresh baguettes are my scent memory of France. And one of the really cool things that we did while we were there was we did go to a perfumery and made a custom scent that I still have
Yeah,
in my yeah,
I
in my
love it.
bathroom. And it's been so interesting saving that scent, and also that entire process was so much fun for me, plus being in France and the whole
Of
thing, but
course.
also even the scent changing over time. But every time I open the bottle, I'm like, it doesn't smell the same as when I initially made it. However, I still love it
Yeah.
because I made it, I named it, I picked out all the notes, and it's just such a special experience. So it's really cool that you have a brand that's actually rooted in an experience and not
Mhm.
just a problem,
Yeah.
actually. It's more of a gain than a problem.
Yeah. No, it was interesting because as I was going through the process of creating Evoquer, kind of the market research initially, I was like, scent memory is such everyone has experienced it, everyone in the world. And so I figured there's got to be a company, brand that already focuses on this. And there wasn't. Like I researched for, weeks, months, even still. I'm keeping an eye out for that kind of concept. And there's just no one who, you know, th- in the fragrance industry brands are always telling you what the scent should remind you of. So, we created
Mhm.
this scent and it should remind you of the beach in Hawaii. But our fragrances are numbered and kind of vaguely named so that they act as a blank canvas for you to create a memory with. And that's kind of how we're a differentiator. And we really heavily focus on experience, as you said, and capturing these kind of life experiences through scent.
Yeah, I was gonna say, since it is your key differentiator,
Hmm.
how did that truly form? So you're working in Paris, you're having this experience where you are experiencing a lot of new smells and a lot of new scents. How did you decide that that was going to be your core differentiator for the brand?
I mean, I think it really was that experience that I had, right? So I bought the perfume right when I moved there and then I wore it every day. And then when I came back, I didn't want to wear that perfume anymore. I wanted to keep it for when I was yeah, I don't wear that. I actually haven't worn that perfume since I got back. I just like bring it out when I'm missing Paris a little. And so that's why we have our fragrances, right? And then for every fragrance we have a matching time capsule, which is a candle and a room fragrance in the same scent. The idea being that you don't need to wear your perfume anymore after. So let's say you wear your fragrance, you've just moved to New York City, and so you wear it your first year in New York, and then you have a candle that you can light when you want to come back to that time in your life without wearing this perfume again. So, it really stemmed from that experience. And I'm such an experience-based person. I love traveling, I love trying new things, and so I really wanted to create this brand all about capturing these moments when, maybe you're trying something new and it's a little bit scary. Moving to Paris was, it sounds amazing, it was amazing, but it was really scary moving to a foreign country, by myself. I didn't know anyone there, working in an office. I was the only female in that entire office, so just yeah, really, like, terrifying decisions, but ended up being the best decision of my life, right? So the brand is also kind of about encouraging people to take these steps to maybe unknown territories because ultimately those usually result in the best memories. So we're there to capture them.
Amen, sister,
Yeah.
for sure.
You get it.
It really is all about the adventures. When I studied abroad and traveled a ton, I don't think I knew anybody ever that I was
Yeah.
going with.
Yeah.
I was so nervous, but I also was so excited because I have a tattoo that says God placed the best things in life on the other side of fear. It's just like you have to get out there. You have to try because having regrets and not experiencing as much as you possibly can during our time on this earth, it matters. And some things are once in a lifetime, but you don't actually know that when it's happening. So you just have to step into the unknown.
100%. You just captured the brand ethos perfectly. I'm glad you get it.
Oh, yeah. I get it. I get it. I get it. And during your experience, I want to hear how you came up with the actual name Evoque and what was the branding and what is the positioning? You said it has a lot of French inspiration, which it definitely does in all of its imagery. So I want to learn about the name.
Yeah, so the name is Evoque, and it is always mispronounced, so it's totally fine if people mispronounce it. I knew that was gonna be an issue, but I wanted it to have some tie back to France because it was really that experience in Paris that sparked the idea for the brand. So there is a lot of tying back to French culture, I would say, in it. But it means in English, it means to evoke. And so the idea is, right, these scents and these time capsules evoke these memories and these feelings. It's not just a moment in time when you have a scent memory, right? It's like really this feeling of being back in a past, era of your life. And so I wanted to name the brand about, evoking those feelings and those memories. So that's the idea behind the name, and then the branding, whenever I get a compliment on the branding, it's literally the best compliment ever because I did everything myself, which is insane to say because my background is in finance and private equity, as we've talked about, so that was a whole exercise, but I just didn't have the budget to hire I reached out to some branding agencies, and the quotes I got back were insane, so I decided to do it myself, and yeah, again, a lot of it is I really wanted it to be I feel like in CPG these days, everything is so, like, flashy and bright colors and neon and overwhelming, and I would go into Sephora and I would see all these designer bottles, and, like, I was like, "I don't want any of these sitting out in my bathroom or on my shelf or anything like that," and the idea of these time capsules is that they're supposed to be in your life, for the rest of your life, and so I wanted to create this, like, timeless, kind of neutral, a lot of blacks, a lot of neutrals. We have a little pop of red in our branding, but really like this timeless, chic, classic vibe. So that's a little bit behind the branding.
Ooh, and I can totally see this just popped to my head of even though somebody with your brand may have a favorite scent just day to day, but over time, they can also get more of your SKUs. I know you're working on some new ones, which is
We
so
are.
exciting. As they keep going through life, they can keep
Exactly.
evolving with your brand, Maybe yes, you bring one on a travel excursion and then you wait a few years and then maybe you get engaged or married and you wear scent number 2. Like, anybody's life can continue with your brand, and that is such an interesting positioning because if you start out with, most brands start out with a problem rather than a gain,
Mhm.
you're looking at, "Oh, how do I solve this problem?" in hopes that either the problem continues or that your brand quite literally solves it and they never had said problem again. Where
Yeah,
yours is completely flipped on its head. You're like, "We wanna ride the wave of life with you," and that is so cool.
exactly. Yeah.
I love that. If anybody's out there with a special something going on in your life, check out Evoque and see if you can add a scent to it because that would be iconic.
Yeah, and also we're actually currently crowdsourcing our one of our next scents, so our next product launch. We're taking votes via social media on the vibe, the notes, everything. So if you want to be involved in that, go check out our social media page.
I'm definitely signing up. I'm there. I'm there.
I love it.
And speaking of everybody who's out there, for the founders who are looking to innovate in a product category like fragrance or CPG, what would be your top 3 things you wish you knew before starting in the space?
Ooh, it was a huge learning curve. So I actually it took a year to develop our first 3 scents and over 300 trials. Unfortunately, it is a learning curve, so I think part of it is, doing your research beforehand, but there is gonna be that steep learning curve, in anything product-based, if you're new to the industry. I would say finding a partner who understands your brand vision, you feel comfortable communicating with, who is really a partner, right? So I interviewed I would say probably 20, 30 design and manufacturing partners ahead of signing with one. I went in there saying the goal is to be in Sephora one day. A lot of people kind of laughed, and that's not what you want in a partner. And so, I had questions about scaling and can you handle this, this volume all while we haven't even launched yet. And I understand that for a lot of people, they're like, okay, good luck, girl. But you want someone who believes in that. And then I would also say my branding and my brand vision, as we've talked about, is differentiated. And so I want someone who like really understood that piece of it and wasn't just transactional, right? Where they're like, okay, well, we'll take your money, we'll design the fragrance for you, and then you're out the door. So I had some very specific criteria I was looking for when I was looking for a manufacturer, specifically in fragrance. A lot of the times they're scent houses, and so you only get a couple trials before you have to pay for every reformulation. I was really looking for more of an artist. The reason that these scent houses do that is because when you think about like laundry detergent, shampoo, anything that smells, these scent houses are working on. So it's very corporate in the sense that they're kind of like pumping out these products, right? When you're making a fragrance for a shampoo, the shampoo is the core product. Like, is it effective on your hair? The fragrance is like a nice to have. When you're working for, when you're making perfume, that is the only purpose of the product. So I really wanted to work with someone who is an artist and not just a corporation. And so again, that was like a lot of my interviews felt very transactional and I really wanted more of a partner. And so I got very lucky with that. But it was a lot of diligence ahead of that. But I would say, yeah, that's an important thing to be focused on, especially in CPG and a product based business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to hear all about the product development process because you've done an incredible job with that. And we will dig into that a little bit later in the podcast. But let's switch gears a little bit. And while you're in this product development phase, you've gone through one, you said it took 300 trials,
Yeah.
samples. That is massive. I have
Yes.
never heard of a brand going through 300 trials. Like, that is insane.
Yes.
So, you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that you're bootstrapped, which is also an incredible feat, but you also have your finance background. In starting your career in investment banking for founders who are maybe a little bit pre-launch, you're only 2 months out, but you're also in a growth phase. What would be the process for raising capital in 2026 and 2027?
Yeah, so it's tough. It's a tough market. I think it has been for the last few years. What's important is to start conversations with these potential investors before you need the money. So you don't want to come to these people, asking for money. You kind of want to start that networking process ahead of time and really build those connections, establish yourself as a brand with them before, you start asking for that money. I think that's an important one. Number two is having a clear path to profitability. You don't need to be profitable right off the bat, but understanding how you will get there is something I think is forgotten a lot of time. Like every brand that comes to these investors has a grand vision of how they're going to grow their business, right? But it's what are the actual steps you're going to take to become profitable and how do you show that in your numbers? Another one or another tip, I guess, I'm now going on tips for raising capital in 2026, 2027, is having an exit plan, right? So your investors, their whole goal is to make money with you, right? So you want to have an idea of how that liquidation event is potentially going to look in the future. And then yeah, I think the last one is being really clear on what you're asking for, whether it's a friends and family round or institutional capital, having a very clear vision of, okay, we are asking for, $1 million and this is where 250K is going to go. This is where 250K is going to go. This is where 500K is going to go. Showing with a financial model how those investments are going to improve your business and make both of you money. So I
Mhm.
think, a lot of times when people are asking for money from investors about brand vision and, marketing and all of this stuff, but you have to remember the financial piece too, because in the end, that's what's most important to these investors is making money, right, for their LPs. So it's an important piece to remember.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And it's such a big conversation right now, especially with female founders and quitting your job or bootstrapping or getting funding. Like it's just all over the place right now. And what would you say are the pros and cons of taking on capital?
Yeah. This is a really interesting question because I feel like everyone wants to raise money, and I'm currently bootstrapped, and there are definitely pros and cons. Pros of taking on capital, you can move fast, right? So, like where I am right now, 2 months launched, there are so many brands in the marketplace. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you create a brand presence? How do you get your name out there quickly, right? So that you can start to take up market share, especially in the beauty space where there are so many brands. So it would be amazing to have a marketing budget that I could, put either hire a team to help me move faster in the space or put more money behind, paid ads. We haven't even started paid ads, do more gifting, show up at more events. So you really have this, opportunity to move fast if you have capital behind the business. I would say, the cons are a lot of people forget this, but you're literally giving away a piece of your business in exchange for the money, right? So you are giving away a piece of your pie, a piece of your equity in exchange for this capital. So when you exit, you don't own 100% of the business anymore. So people, I feel like, think that this, VC money, you just get this money and you can make your business grow. You're actually exchanging a piece of your business. So that's an important thing to remember. I will say, obviously, you're getting access to this capital, which hopefully should, right, grow your business at a much faster scale, to a much bigger scale, so that trade-off is worth it. But happy to get into that a little bit later. I would say the other con is if you are wanting to focus on slow, steady growth, you now have investors to report to, and you're not the only person making decisions. So if that is the path that you want to take, not pushing all the time, not pushing fast, not spending lots of money, you might not have that option. And you might be growing in maybe a different way than you had initially envisioned if you bring these partners on board, because again, right, their end goal is to make money with your business. So they're going to be focused on growing fast, and maybe focusing on profitability faster than you would have, or, whatever it is, but you're not the only person making decisions. I want to add one more pro. Your investors should not just be a financial partner. They should complement your skill set and your business's skill sets to help you grow. So maybe they have connections in, for operating partners if you're lacking in the ops space, or media connections, if you haven't gotten a lot of good PR for your business lately. They are not just money. They should also be kind of like an operating partner in a sense, if you find the right partner. So definitely pros and cons.
Definitely pros and cons. And then there's the opposite side where founders say, no, I'm not going to raise capital from the get go. Maybe it's something that's along the lines once they are even profitable. They're just like, okay,
Mm.
to get from 10 to 100 or 50 to 100, that's kind of the next little fuel piece that they need. But for founders that are actually bootstrapping, what are your thoughts on bootstrapping, starting another small business to fund your dream brand, or getting a full time job to help support the bootstrapping of your dream brand?
Yeah, the bootstrapping is very tough. As I mentioned, my product development took a very long time. Initially, when I had this idea for the brand, I wanted to launch in June 2025. We launched in February 2026, and I didn't have a job that whole time, right? I think we've talked about a little bit. I do financial consulting on the side. So I have, I work on an hourly rate, for some clients, but that is all word of mouth. I'm not marketing that business at all. So it's kind of few and far between. So all that said, was and am very strapped for cash in this business, being bootstrapped. And that has, as I mentioned previously, I did all the branding myself. So I was not able to invest money into branding or website development. I did the website all myself. I've been very scrappy with all the content we've done. I've never paid a photographer to do any of our content, which if you look at our website, I got very lucky with the photographer I found on Facebook Marketplace, but we can get into some of those scrappier tactics later. Anyway, all that said, there's a lot of skills that I didn't have that I probably would have been more efficient and done better had I had the cash to hire someone to do those things, where then I could focus on the ops and the finance, which is really where my strengths are. So I think while you're bootstrapping, if you are able to have some kind of consulting or full-time job, it just gives you so much more flexibility in being able to invest in parts of your business that are not your strength, which is important. That said, I also think it is important to have a good understanding of all of these pieces of your business. So now that I have spent time on my website and have spent time, creating these photo shoots and working on the branding, I feel like I have a way better concept in designing all my packaging, right? That was a huge, I mean, I really wish I could have outsourced that. But sourcing and designing all my packaging was just a mission that I hopefully will never have to do again. But that's understanding that whole process and being able to speak to now, what I like, what I don't like, being able to create a web page really fast around the Coachella gifting thing, which we can get into a second, which I got way more responses on. So I had to, late at night, 10 p.m., create this like URL, custom page. So basically having experience in all of these different pieces of the business it is important even when you hire someone so that you can be able to speak to those, and talk the same language as these experts in their field. So, pros and cons again.
This entire episode is just a giant pros and cons. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
and it's so interesting that you have a consulting business. A lot of founders that I see who are younger or building in public, even myself, we have these consultancy branding agencies, like these ebbs and flow type businesses, I would say.
Mhm.
Um, and I would also say a lot of us are not marketing the business whatsoever. It's just
Yes.
however people find out is however it finds out. I just get random phone calls from people and
Yep.
I'm like,
Yep.
hello, who are you? They're like, oh, I heard it
Yep.
from so and so, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, sure. And especially right now, we're living in a wild job market.
Mhm.
We'll say that. And for founders who have experienced these extended periods of unemployment, I know we don't necessarily see ourselves as unemployed, but we also are very much not full time employees. I don't really know what
For
to call
sure.
us, but we're somewhere in the middle.
Unemployed,
What are
probably
some, I mean, like, yeah,
yeah.
this is definitely staying in the episode. What have been some of your strategies for funding and or helping your personal situation? You do have your consultancy and you've been scrappy along the way. Let's dig into some of that scrappiness for a second.
Yeah. I will say in terms of, like, funding, so I have the consulting business. I do dog walking, dog sitting, like, I try to think of other random jobs. Oh, I have a, like, travel account, Instagram account, and I, like, never post on it anymore because I started it when I was traveling, but I will sometimes get, like, random requests to do, like, UGC content, which is, like, $300 here and there. It's little money, but, when you're unemployed, you gotta, like, take these odd jobs to keep the, business running. So I am kind of like in that situation. Now it's been a little bit better because I've launched and so I'm actually bringing some money in, but for that period where I was doing kind of the consulting and these odd jobs, I mean, you just kind of have to do whatever you can. In terms of being scrappy, I have mentioned that I've done everything myself. So in this day and age, you have access to so many resources. So when I was in that time off traveling and kind of just, thinking about what to do, I consumed as much entrepreneurship content as I could. I listened to a million podcasts. I read so many books. Like I just tried to learn as much as I can. And so being open to learning and trying things and being scrappy in those ways, you'd be surprised. Like podcast episodes, I have a running list of all the notes I've taken over like the last 2 years on podcast episodes of just little things, right? Like this, this tactic worked for this CPG brand. I'm going to try that when I get to that stage. And, I hadn't even launched a business. I didn't know what business I was going to launch. And I was taking these kinds of notes. So now I have this kind of resource list of ideas, scrappy ideas really, when you don't have a lot of budget. So I would say podcasts are a great resource for those. Probably scrappiest thing I have done whenever I tell people there's like, this is a really good idea and they write it down. So I did a little bit of modeling in high school and I was part of these trade for photo groups, which is basically when you work with a photographer, a makeup artist, a hairstylist, all these people to create content to build up your portfolio. So you don't pay for the photographer doesn't pay for you as a model. And so you just kind of put this like creative group of people together and you create content and then everyone benefits from it. I went online and I went to LA trade for photo groups on Facebook. And I said, I'm launching a brand. If you are looking to build your portfolio in the e-commerce space, here's the mood board. This is what I want to do. This is trade for photo opportunity. I won't be able to pay you, but this is what we're going to do. And I was able to piece together a few different photo shoots through that. I will say I got extremely lucky. I got 200 inquiries on my first one. So I had to spend a ton of time
Wow.
going through all the Facebook, responses and looking at the portfolios, vetting them. A lot of them were not photographers that I really wanted to work with, but I did get a few, reached out to them. got extremely lucky with the ones I worked with. Like, if you look at my website, the imagery, I could not have launched without this photographer. I would shout him out, but he's actually currently touring in the Philippines. He's in a band, so he's no longer. All of my friends who are entrepreneurs are like, "Can I hire this guy?" And I was like, I wish." He's now out of the country. But yeah, I got very lucky with him. The imagery is beautiful. You can check out our website. But things like that, where you're just like, I seriously do not have the money to. I got quoted, multiple thousands of dollars to get product photography done, and then I decided I would get a camera and a whiteboard and do it myself. And if you look at my product photos, I did all of those myself. I edited those all myself. So just being willing to do it all. I feel like every time I got quoted something for a service that I was looking for, I was like, well, I literally cannot afford that. So I will figure out how to do it myself. YouTube University, listening to podcasts again. It's just kind of having that mentality of like, the only option is to do it myself. I literally do not have the money and you will figure it out.
I like literally just got a shiver because I felt that literally down my spine.
Yes. Yes, you understand.
Full like shivers down my spine because that is so true. That's how we're all literally making it. I'm the same way even with this podcast. I have learned how to create my own systems, outreach to working this editing platform to recording and the mics and everything. And you just have to do it. And once you start, it does not feel as hard as
Yeah,
when you were thinking about doing it beforehand.
so true.
So it's a crazy, 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 crazy time. But enough about like funding and all that kind of stuff. Let's get into the fun part of creating a standout product like your scent memory fragrances. Can you walk us through the process of how to create a fragrance from start to finish?
Yes, that is probably the number one question I get asked. So it starts with well, first you need to find a manufacturer designer. I knew that I would not be able to do it. At first, I was like, maybe I should order a perfumer's beginner kit. And then I realized that that was not the best use of my time. So I started looking for a designer and manufacturing partner. Once I found them, this is where the fun part starts. So you do a creative brief, which is basically like, if this fragrance were a color, what would it be? If it were a texture, what would it be? What mood does this evoke? And then you put together a mood board. And so you really kind of answer these abstract questions about the fragrance before you start getting into the notes. Now, I will give some note direction, I will say, to my designers. Initially, they would just create things for me based on those creative briefs. And we would smell, 100 individual notes. They'd see kind of what I gravitated towards, and then they'd create these sketches. A fully finished fragrance has 40-ish ingredients, 20 to 50, anywhere in that range. These sketches have 5 and they're very different from each other. And you kind of see, what direction do you want to take the fragrance? Once you have a direction, then you start to do the trial formulation. And so that's where we did 300 trials for the first 3 fragrances. And that is just iterating on, what if we take it this direction? More woods, less fruit, more florals. What if we add this note? What if we take this note away? What if we add, all of these what ifs? I am a very indecisive person. So this process was incredibly tough for me, which is probably why it took 300 trials. Luckily, the second time around where we're developing our new scent, it's been a much easier process, which has been great. There's a big learning curve again. And so, yeah, it's just trial and error. Once we get to final forms, I wouldn't say the final form, but a good enough fragrance that I pick 2 to 3 different variations of the fragrance. And then I actually have a sampler group and I put that together through TikTok. I literally just posted a video. This was, last year when I was going through the formulation process. And I said, I have a fragrance brand. I want people to test it before it comes to market and help decide, which version of the fragrance they like better. So that trial group got to test different variations of the fragrances that are now on the market and help decide which ones came to market. And we are currently doing that for our crowdsourced fragrance. So we'll be sending out trials soon. You should definitely be a part of that if you would like. So we can get those samples out to people, get feedback. I'll hop on a call with them. I'll have them fill out an anonymous Google form. So we get very, very honest feedback, which is helpful for me. And then we bring it to market. It's a very long process, but that's how we get those scents that people love, truly love.
Wow, that is such a process. And it's so meticulous
Yes.
too. Even though it's your nose who is making these decisions, it also is a product that you need people to buy. So you created this community. In tech, it's like beta groups. But
Yeah,
for you, you're
exactly.
like, you really need human scent. AI cannot sniff a perfume. Sorry.
No. And
That can't be
yeah,
outsourced.
I think it's really important that you get product feedback from your target customer, right? So, and this is a perfect example. So, my favorite fragrance in our launch collection is O3 Do. I thought it was going to be the best seller. I was going to order inventory, a larger amount of inventory for that scent because I thought it was going to be our best seller because it was my favorite. It's not. It's not our best seller. Fragrance is so subjective. And O2 Amaret is our best sellers. Having the product feedback from, those tester groups and then actually being in person at pop-ups ahead of our launch, I brought some samples or whatever. I had the final fragrances, but I hadn't made the bulk inventory purchase, but being able to get the feedback from those pop-ups and understanding what people were gravitating towards and what they were buying actually informed my inventory purchase decisions in the future. Market feedback, customer feedback is so critical in a product-based business.
And you are becoming really good at it too. This year, you attended Coachella to promote your brand. What was the value that you gained by attending that event as a new founder?
Yeah, so I think it's a few things. One of them is we are an experience-based fragrance brand. We show up kind of maybe where other fragrance brands don't. And so that was a big part of it. And Coachella has always been, I mean, I've lived in LA for 6 years now. I've gone to too many Coachellas to say out loud. So that's like to me, that is like the gold standard of an experience where, if you create a scent memory with that weekend, that's like exactly what I want this brand to be, right? So I think creating this, showing up in that space was just important for kind of like the brand vision and what we stand for. Now, on the more technical side, Coachella is this huge, huge marketing opportunity, right? I mean, brands are throwing thousands, if not, more marketing activations throughout that whole, especially the first weekend, but really the 2 weeks. And so being able to participate in the hype around it, even as a very small brand, is really important. We collected, I think I added like 450 emails to our email list through Coachella marketing. All of our content on the brand account was getting pushed out like crazy because everyone is looking up like Coachella outfits, Coachella hacks, like Coachella tips. And so just mentioning Coachella in a video, the algorithm would then push it out. So we got a bunch of eyeballs on the brand. We got a bunch of follows through that. And then we, as I said, got a bunch of emails added to the list. And I actually have one of the little samples. So we handed out a couple hundred of these samples and really talked about like the ethos of creating a scent memory, with an experience. And so I think that really, I mean, the amount of feedback I got of that resonating with other people. And I actually, I don't know if I can say this yet. Probably by the time this comes out, I can. But we got our first retail partnership. A brand or a retail boutique down in Costa Mesa was doing a pre-Coachella festival pop-up. They saw my content around Coachella, invited us to be a part of the pop-up. I left a fragrance with the owner just saying, thank you so much for having us. And then she emailed and said, do you guys do wholesale? And I said, yes, we do. So that is, we're probably going to be, I just sent that product out, so it's not officially on shelves. Yeah, I think you got to jump on those marketing opportunities as a small brand. Like the last point I'll say on this, I could go on about this forever, but we put together these little PR packages, right? And we don't have the budget to make this massive, gorgeous, massive box with all of this stuff in it where it's all Coachella branded, like all this stuff. I have a very limited budget. So I reached out to mostly non-influencers, actually, gifted them product, a little bandana, and then a few of them had disposable cameras in it. I just put it in our regular craft box that we ship stuff in. And then I hand delivered these throughout Coachella that weekend. Gosh, that was a day. I spent probably 16 hours driving that day. But the gratitude that these people had for these, PR packages that were hand delivered by the founder. If you're not an influencer, you probably never gotten a PR package. So they were so grateful for these packages. We got tons of organic mentions on social media, lots of videos I could repost, lots of organic content. I'm just mentioning the brand, which again is so important to have outside accounts and people talking about your brand, especially as a new brand, just getting the name out there. And word of mouth is the most effective form of marketing. If you are a non-influencer and you're getting a PR package hand delivered by the founder, the chances of you telling your friends about that brand are probably pretty high. So I felt like it was a really, really good opportunity, low marketing budget required way to get a brand name out there.
No, but that is so cool. We haven't had a founder on the podcast go to a music festival event. We've had some CPG founders who went to Expo West, but nothing in, again, like you said, like the experience space, something like a
Yeah.
music festival, and how to actually use those opportunities as huge launching grounds for a small business who especially needs human feedback as well. So it's really interesting and just like so cool. Congratulations on
Thank you.
going to Coachella as a brand founder for the first time and making some really heavy strategic partnerships while you were there. This girl was working while she was also in the desert covered in dust. Like,
Yes, a lot
let's
of
go.
dust. Yeah, no, it was a great opportunity, and we have a couple more things coming out of that, which I can't say quite yet, but keep an eye out on our socials because there was some more stuff around Coachella that will be being announced soon.
That is so cool. And I know partnerships are a big part of your brand. And I know eventually you may be gunning for making custom fragrances for things like Coachella or larger music festivals and or events. What would it actually take to create a custom fragrance for an event like that?
Yeah, so we actually offer custom fragrances right now for events and bigger scale events, but also weddings, right? So
Mhm.
wedding fragrances are such a big part of our target market. We work with a lot of wedding planners around this. We offer a ton of different packages from custom labels on our signature scents to actual custom scents for brides and grooms and events. So now that I've gone through the process of creating a custom or creating scents, this, last year that took a year, 300 trials, I have a much better understanding of how to create fragrance. As I said, we're going through developing our next products now. That process has been a lot easier. So it's really just working with the client, the event, their goals, right? What they like. And it's different probably for an event where you're kind of focusing on maybe a specific scent or feeling you want to evoke versus a bride who that is just such a personal decision on do you like florals? Do you like woody? Do you like spicy? So yeah, it's just working with whoever the client is on their needs, what they're looking for, and guiding them through the process of creating these fragrances. But we do offer that as a service right now. So if you're in the market for a wedding fragrance, let us know, and or if you have an event coming up or know someone with an event where a multi-sensory marketing opportunity would be good, we are all ears. To that point, we're working with a couple brands right now on creating custom fragrances for their locations, the retail spots. So
You have so much going on, which is amazing. And you've mentioned a lot that you do pop ups and markets when you were even pre launch, but now that you are launched, you're definitely doing a lot of smaller events as well. How have you been getting in contact with those organizers and operators?
it has been through social media, actually. So many of those have been inbounds. I think I want to say like every single event I've done has been an inbound request for us to pop up. And then same thing with the retail, right? We have a couple more retail partnerships launching soon, which have all been inbound as well. So I just have to say, like, being active on social media has opened so many doors. And then really once, you pop up at one event, you're on their social media, people will come to these events actually with business cards saying, I host markets or, I have a retail location, like we'd love to have you here. So once you have one connection in that space, it just snowballs into a bunch more. But really social media like kickstarted all of those opportunities. So they've been great.
And like I said at the beginning of this episode, you have been one of the most dedicated building in public founders I have ever come across.
Thank
What
you.
was it like posting at the very beginning? You've done almost 500 days now. Now we're not necessarily counting the days because you're post launch, but
Yeah.
in those 500 days, what was it like posting at the very beginning? How did it change over time? What would be your advice for founders out there trying to find consistency in posting?
It's so funny. I was actually thinking about this the other day, like thinking about the videos that I used to post in the beginning is so cringy. But what is good is I started posting so early and I learned, how to talk in front of a camera. It is so awkward to turn on the camera and talk to it. Like I cannot tell you how many times I had to retake videos or even voiceovers. Like I was so monotone. It was just they were awful. But I think starting that early way before launch allowed me to kind of have this ramp up and learning how to create content and learning what's engaging and what does well, what performs well. It's practice makes perfect, right? Like editing used to take me a day to make a video and now it's an hour. So I think posting early you're going to be bad. Like it's just the nature of the game, but being willing to learn to get better is what's really important. And it was so funny because when I first started, I actually didn't say what I was creating. I mean, I started posting in October of 2024, which was basically the day I decided to move forward. I had the idea in August 2024, and then I started to work on it full time, really full time, while traveling in October. And so I started posting about it then, and I like didn't say what it was, and I just like don't scroll back to the beginning of my TikTok page because it's really bad back there. But yeah, it's changed a lot, and you just learn what works, what doesn't, and just getting better over time. In terms of staying consistent, content calendar and batching will be your friend if you are trying to post, while you have a full-time job, if you are trying to post from multiple accounts like I am at the moment, my brand account, my personal account, trying to keep up my travel account just for fun, but batching content is so important. So I basically have a content calendar. You don't need to do the full month, just do the week ahead. Figure out what videos you're going to do, what posts you can schedule them. I would recommend blocking 3 hours or 2 hours or whatever it is to script all your voiceovers, record those, and then the next day edit the videos. So you have all of your content done for the week in 2 days, which are just like blocks of time. That will save you. If you are trying to create content every day, it's just mentally taxing to wake up and be like, all right, what am I going to post today? So I highly recommend.
Oh, yes, I preach batching content.
Yeah.
It saves you decision fatigue, if anything.
Yes.
So do
Yes.
that for yourself and batch all the content. I love the content calendar. You may be one of my only founders thus far who does have an actual content calendar. So honestly, kudos to you. And that's probably how you did post 500 days because that's wild. That
I
is
also didn't
wild.
have a job, which I will say, if you could set your own
Helps.
schedule, it helps a lot. And I do not want to, take away from the fact that I was very lucky to have the time to be able to figure all that stuff out.
Absolutely. And in doing all of this and keeping yourself on socials, you got to launch, which was what you were counting down, or I guess counting up to in your content. And you actually sold out of a few products, including your discovery set, which I cannot personally wait to get my hands on. So, how did you build that early traction that resulted in a successful launch day?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really was the posting, behind the scenes, building the business ahead of launch. We had an incredible launch month. Really, yeah, as you said, we sold out of our discovery sets, which was unexpected and amazing. Also kind of a problem because you're leaving sales on the table, but I think it is really like posting, ahead of that launch, getting people involved. I think doing the trial, like the tester group, actually helped gain a lot of like that series did really well on TikTok. So getting your customer involved on your product launch was a really good move and helps kind of drive that traction.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And as you have this beta group going on, you're doing product development, you're posting on socials. You mentioned that you have a scheduler for your content. What else is in your tool stack? Emails, operations. How do you keep yourself and Evoque running on a daily basis?
Notion is like the number one. I know you use Notion too. Notion is the number one. Like my life is in Notion. If Notion shut down tomorrow, we would have a big issue. But Notion is huge, personal and professional. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically like almost like a note-taking organization app, but there's so much more. There's templates. That's where my social media calendar lives. And so just check that out if you haven't heard that yet. I use Klaviyo for my emails. I use Figma to design my emails. There's a really good YouTube video if you just look up Figma to Klaviyo email design. It's 20 minutes. I watched that, and that is how I developed my whole email campaign and flow system. It's much more robust than what you're able to do in Shopify or natively in Klaviyo. I highly recommend creating your emails in Figma and then exporting them into Klaviyo. Klaviyo? We use Klaviyo actually, sorry. And then what else do we use? We use Shopify collabs for all of our influencers. So people who organically post about our content. We've had a few actually influencers who have purchased our product and then posted about it. I'll reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love to offer you a discount code for your audience. So we use Shopify collabs for that. It's definitely not the most robust tool, but it's good for where we're at now. And it's free, which is important at this stage. I'm trying to think what else we use. Claude, I mean, Claude is just, it does a lot for me. I'm trying to get a lot better about using that. CapCut for editing is my preferred software. And then I'm currently working on figuring out Shopify plugins to do, I would say, better analytics on what's happening in our shop, in our email marketing, all of that. So maybe I can give you a follow-up in a month or 2 on those tools, but I know there's a lot, like, so much out there, in terms of Shopify plugins to help with making more informed
That
decisions
is
on that.
Absolutely. That's an amazing stack. If you guys are founders out there and you don't use Notion, highly, highly, highly recommend digging into Notion, like Grace said, personally and professionally, because that's also how I run this entire podcast
Yeah,
myself and how I get through my MBA program is all through Notion. And it is a very hard tool to describe. I need to actually Google how Notion defines itself because you can just do quite literally everything on there. It's amazing. And like you, Grace, I need to figure out how to plug it into so many more tools so that the tech stack can work as this machine rather than all of these amazing pieces. I have been posting a ton on my social media, both for the podcast, but for also for the business I'm starting in my MBA program on email marketing because it is
mhm.
such an important part of startups. And although the advice out there is get on your email marketing as soon as possible, it is always the last thing that people think about in marketing. So
So true.
it's really great to hear that you are using Clavio or Clavio. We'll get that clarified at one point in time. That is your tool stack because I've heard of so many. I heard of OmniSend and Kit and Clavio and, using the native tools that may have been in Shopify or some other platforms. But it is great to hear of another Clavio girl. And so we're going to be wrapping up here soon, which is crazy to say. Back to our female founders who are building brands. And we know that there's only 2% of venture capital that goes to women. What do you believe would actually increase that percentage as a female founder yourself?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it's getting more women on the other side of the table, and being in the investing shoes. As I think I mentioned previously, I was the only woman on our entire in our entire firm globally on the investing team. So between our LA, New York, and Paris presence, European presence, I was the only woman on the investing team, which is really too bad. So I think getting more women on the investing side of things will result in more dollars being given to women, and I really hope to pivot my consulting business one day into more of an angel fund and being able to invest, my skill set, but also my dollars into female founded businesses. So stay tuned for that because hopefully that will be sometime in the future.
Yeah. And as you've gone through this process as a busy and ambitious female founder, what do you believe has been your superpower in building your brand?
I think it's honestly, this is going to sound so cliche, but I love to learn. I love doing new things. I love being challenged in new ways. So I think, being an entrepreneur is the full expression of that, right? You're always doing something new, you're always doing something different. And as your business grows and as your business scales, these skill sets, it's new skill sets, it's new opportunities, it's new challenges. And so just that kind of momentum has been so fun, in being an entrepreneur. And I think too, having the background in investment banking and private equity just instilled a work ethic where there was no off ever in those businesses. It wasn't a 9 to 5. It wasn't at 5 p.m. you close your laptop. And so I've just always had this mentality of work kind of always being on, which has definitely been a leg up because there hasn't been this massive like, oh, now I have to work on Saturdays for this business because I've been working on Saturdays my whole career. So that might sound a little
You're like,
depressing,
what
but
is Saturday?
yeah, exactly. But I will say when you own your own business, it doesn't feel like you're this is gonna sound so lame probably, but I love waking up on a Saturday morning, getting a cup of coffee and working. That is just my happy place. It doesn't feel like, I have no meetings, I don't have anywhere to be. I can just do the fun stuff of working on my business. I love building my business. So, yeah.
That is so good. And I ditto that. Working on your own business can be exhausting sometimes when the pressure is on. But then if you have a little bit of a glimmer that says, I'm technically the only person putting this pressure on, you can also alleviate it. You can put the
Yes.
pressure on yourself to get things done and to race to the finish line, but you also get to alleviate that stress. You can listen to your body and say, you know what? I do want to work this Saturday. I feel like I'm in the mood. The sun is shining. But on the opposite end, you could wake up next Saturday and be like, the sun is shining. I just have a coffee. I would like to go for a walk. And I
No,
bet
it's
you
It's so
you'll have the
true.
best ideas all week on the walk. So you're like, I'm not working right now, but I also have this insane mental clarity just by giving myself the space and the allowance to do whatever I need to do that day.
It's so true, and something that I realized, when I took my travels, as I said, I kind of, like, had this space to be creative again, and I think that is still so important to this day. Like, I am on my computer all the time. I'm really, in the trenches, right? Especially at this stage, I'm just, like, so in the weeds, in the details, but I think it's so important to put yourself in a new environment, a new situation, and kind of have that space still to be creative. Like that's where a lot of my best, marketing ideas. We have an event coming up that I'm working on planning, and I had that idea, when I was not actually at home. I was on a trip, and so I think making time for travel like that and just stepping away. Yes, you're not working, but it actually will benefit you in your business in the long term to have those kind of more restful days or weekends.
Absolutely. And for our ambitious crew members out there that also find themselves deep in the trenches right now, what has kept you going during those times?
Yeah, I think it kind of what you were saying earlier, like when you have a glimmer of, I'm not going to say hope, but like when an opportunity presents itself, you've been working on this business so hard, and then you get this email that says, "We'd love to have Evoquer at XYZ event," or, "We'd love to stock Evoquer on the shelves at this retail," like getting my first retail partnership or having a collab that I can't mention yet. But, getting these opportunities that you've worked so hard for, just that like little, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening." That feeling when that happens for your business that you built, like there is nothing that compares to it. So getting those little opportunities, even getting like a sale, the sales on Shopify, when I get that Shopify notification, I'm like, it puts me in the best mood. So it makes me so excited to keep working and, be in those positions where maybe it's late at night or it's a Sunday where I don't want to be working, but I have to. I think, those opportunities of that feeling of achieving something keeps you going.
I love that. That's exactly what we needed to hear today. And zooming out too, for you personally, at the end of this, what's beyond the trenches for you?
I was gonna say I don't really see an end, in the business. I don't even if you're not the founder at 2 months, but you're a founder 10 years later, I think you're still in the trenches. It's just a different kind of trench. So, I don't know if there is an end in sight. I would also be very open to starting a new business. I have about a million business ideas. So maybe one day I will be working on one of those after MOK has had its time. But no, I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities in the near future for Evoke, especially around experiences that we've talked about. So really kind of ingraining ourselves into that world, and getting some partnerships in the experiences space, event space is really kind of a longer term goal for us. But yeah, so many exciting things coming up, and I like that there's no end, no end in sight.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And thank you so much for all that you have shared with us today. In our last question, we love this question. What is something you wish you could tell everyone listening to this episode?
I would say networking. Don't forget to network. And that is like my number one tip as an entrepreneur is networking. It's uncomfortable. It's not always fun. It sucks to go to these events alone. You really sometimes don't want to, but the opportunities that your network and their network and connections open up for yourself and your business is so critical. I think that's just a really, if you're an entrepreneur in any field, right? You don't have to be an entrepreneur in any career aspect, industry. Network is just so, so important. And once you meet one person, they'll introduce you to three more, and it just snowballs from there. But really putting yourself out there, even though it's scary, results in the best experiences, best results, which I know you fully understand. So kind of about full circle moment back to the ethos of okay and kind of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. But yeah, I think that's really important.
Thank you so much for sharing that
Thank
with
you.
us, Grace. I'm so glad that we did this podcast together, that we have turned from TikTok mutuals to now in real life friends. And I cannot wait to get Evoque in my hands and do my own little smell test on TikTok.
I
I'm
love it.
bursting at the seams. So I cannot wait for me to be your next Shopify notification.
Thank you. No,
I'm
thank you
coming.
so
I'm
much for
coming for
having
it.
me. Thank you so much for having me. This was an
Yeah.
amazing conversation. I hope it was helpful. And yeah, I just loved chatting with you. So much fun.
It's been amazing. So, for the crew members out there, please go follow Grace on TikTok. That is at Grace Howland _ for her personal account. And go check out the website, which is shopevoke.com, to purchase your new favorite scent or to purchase the discovery kit. That is also at Shop Evoke on Instagram and TikTok, so that you may be a part of their new testing cycle.
Yes.
Thank you so much again, Grace, for joining me today on Trenches. I am super grateful that you chose to spend the time with us today. And to the crew, we will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you.
Don't forget to follow us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Your likes, comments, and ratings make such a big difference in improving the show for each and every crew member. Also, if you're not already, come and join us on TikTok and Instagram at Trenches the Podcast, where we don't just share clips, we're creating a network of co-builders in the comments. Each post is designed to be a truly impactful addition to your scroll that will actually help you improve your journey in many different ways. Now, since you're already a part of the crew, this is how you step inside. By allocating to the fund on Patreon, you become a stakeholder in Trenches the Podcast and officially join our cap table. With access to private content, early drops, resources, and chats reserved for people truly in the work. Here is where you get the tools and the behind the scenes of what it really takes to get beyond the trenches. Your seat gives you direct access to contribute and make long-term decisions for our crew while finding community with fellow builders. It's time to take your seat at the table. Our mission is simple: make entrepreneurship less lonely. I'll see you in the next episode.